Hello and welcome to the Rabyd Atheist. I'm Ed Raby, a former pastor turned atheist, now compassionate anti-theist. Welcome to my channel. Feel free to like or dislike the video as you see fit, so feel free to hit those buttons. Feel free to comment below, and I would appreciate it if you'd subscribe to the channel and hit your notification bell for more content as it is released. You're also free to share my videos as much as you like, because the purpose of this channel is educational in regards to atheist and deconversion issues and any other issues related to those issues. A hearty shout out to the Rabyd Nation. If you want to become part of the nation, just hit that subscribe button. Or if you want to become a citizen of the Rabyd Nation, just hit the join button and your options will be displayed. Thank you once again for all of you that have given me support, whether moral or financial. You're awesome. Thank you very much. Today is Sundays with the Rabyd Atheist for October 22nd, 2023. And I want to I got 4 things on the agenda today. Number 1, I want to give 7 ways in which secularism is superior to religion. I then want to talk about Biden's speech about a day ago where he addressed the ideas of anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. And then I want to talk about Job, chapters 32 through 37, where Elihu rises and gives his defense of God to Job and rebukes Job. I want to talk a little bit about that. And then I want to deal with some comments. But firstly, the 7 ways that secularism is superior to religion. Now, before I begin, I want to caveat this. Just because one is an atheist doesn't necessarily make them a secularist. Okay, I've met a few atheists that don't believe, in secularism. They think, there's got to be some other way. But I am a secularist on top of being an atheist, but those aren't necessarily the same thing. But I believe, and always had believed, even when I was a Christian, in a secular government, because I can even see that the moment a religion, gets power, they have a tendency to use the government as a cudgel, as a way of destroying others that don't agree with them. And so secularism has always kind of been a part of my ideology. But now that I'm an atheist, it's something that I do support, and I want to talk about 7 ways in which it's superior to religion. Number 1, secularism doesn't allow us to stop thinking. Okay, we have to keep thinking. Faith gives you some sort of black and white answer from your book or whatever. My faith says this, therefore it's true, and then you don't have to think about that issue anymore. One of the great challenges I've had since becoming an atheist and embracing secularism, I've had to actually think about morals and ethics and not invoke some, authority figure or anything, but more on that in a minute. And so secularism keeps me thinking about things. I can't just run to the authority of whatever religion and say, this religious tenet, this matter of faith settles it, so I don't have to think about it anymore. I don't have the option of not thinking about things, and I'd rather think about an issue than just leave it to somebody else now. And it opens a lot of more opportunities. Number 2, it helps us to deal with reality. We have come up with real solutions for real problems. A good example of this is my own autistic struggles. All my life I've struggled with feeling like I was the odd person out. I've had hypersensitivity, but thought it was a whole bunch of other things. But once I got into actual secular counseling and some therapy, we began to explore the idea of hypersensitivity and me being autistic. And all of a sudden, I now have these real-world solutions to deal with a real-world problem. And secularism does that. It doesn't deal with pie-in-the-sky answers. Oh, just pray about it, or just read the scriptures, or just believe a little bit harder. You actually have to go out and find ways to actually help the issue and actually solve the problem. Secularism doesn't have a way of copping out and going into some sort of religious or spirituality as a way to solve the problem. Number 3, secularists are real about suffering, and they don't invoke mystery to explain it. I now accept that I live in a universe where suffering is just the way it is. Okay, I don't need an explanation. It's sad, it's tragic to me, but I also now, going back to number 2, start to work towards real-world solutions to alleviate as much of that suffering as possible and bring about as much good as possible. I don't sit there and say, well, it's a mystery why God doesn't do anything about it, or the gods don't, or whatever. I don't have that. I look at suffering and say, it is what is, okay? And that allows me to actually look at the subject of suffering and say, you know what, there's things that we can do to alleviate that. And that kind of, to me is a better way of handling it. Religion kind of either says, we're going to bury our heads in the sand, we give credit to God when good things happen, but it's a mystery when bad things happen. And it's kind of a way of dodging, in my opinion, now. I used to do it myself, but now I'm like, can't dodge it. Suffering exists. It's part of nature, and that's the way it is. It's tragic when some things happen, but they're bound to happen in the universe where this is the way it is. So we work for a better world, we work for a better humanity, and we work for real ways to end suffering. 4, it provides a better approach to finding truth. The problem with religion, of course, is truth is all wrapped up in authority. You either have the authority of your scriptures or the authority of scriptures and religious figures or the authority of religious figures. And those are the people that give authority to religion, and that's the way you find truth. We don't find truth that way in secularism. We get rid of the wishful thinking of religion, and we try to do research. We try to analyze things, use real world measurements, and try to figure out in some way how that can be fixed, okay, and whether we can find truth that way. We're actually looking at things and making observations and writing down data and doing hard research, whereas a religious figure just says, well, the authority says this, so that's the way it is. Let's be honest, religion has been the enemy of science almost since science started. And there's a reason for that, because science strips the whole curtain away of this idea of authority and mystery. Okay. Number 5, secularists discard comforting assertions in favor of uncomfortable truths. And then we proceed to engage those uncomfortable truths to find enlightenment. I don't really deal with this idea of having comforting lies about me anymore. I'd rather know as many true things as possible as a secularist, and then deal with them to find some sort of real enlightenment that actually solves those mysteries. I don't sit there and say that anything has a sacredness or a sacred cow to it. And I don't think secularism does that. They get rid of all that, and they're looking for enlightenment on the uncomfortable truths of life instead of just wrapping themselves in a comfortable blanket that religion gives. Okay, it's about being real. Okay. 6, we are optimistic about the world. I think secularism gives me a great deal of optimism in contrast to religion's pessimism. Nearly all of my Christian life, I was told we were sinners and this world was destined for damnation and destruction. I don't look at it that way anymore. I actually have a lot of quote-unquote faith in humanity at times, or at least in the humans that decide to be rational and engage in real problems with real solutions. I don't have a lot of faith in invisible deities that don't exist or religious figures that claim to know such things. And I certainly don't have an apocalyptic view of the world anymore. As far as I know, this world is going to continue to spin around the sun for billions of years. Whether there's probably a high likelihood that humanity won't be there when we get there, but the planet is going to continue to go on. And I have an optimistic view of humanity and its relationship to the world if we stay rational and if we stay secular. The more we embrace religion, I think we get away from that. Number 7, I think secularism keeps us humble. I don't believe that some sugar daddy picked me special. I don't think that my religion is the only way to God. I don't have these notions. I don't sit there and think that God created all of this because I'm the center of the universe. I've discarded all of that. I realize how insignificant I am and how insignificant humanity is and how insignificant the planet Earth is in consideration of the vastness of the human space. And it keeps me humble, a realization that my life is finite, it ends, and then it's over. And that keeps me very humble about where I'm going to be and what I'm going to do and what I'm going to accomplish. It's very unlike religion that tries to make you into something that you're not. I remember when I was growing up, you're a king's kid. No, I'm not. Okay, you're a child of the king. No, I'm not. Okay, there's just a whole bunch of things that they try to elevate your ego with, and I just don't have that anymore. Instead, I face my very real problems and deal with it very well, in a very humble manner, realizing I may not find the answers, I may not get justice, I may not get anything, okay? And that's because I live in the real world now. I don't live in a fantasy land. Moving on to our second part. I want to talk about, Biden gave a speech about a day ago or 2 days ago by the time this video drops, in which he was addressing the American public. And there's a lot in that speech. It's like 20 minutes long, but there was a line in it about, or a segment about, where he says something to the effect of, we need to guard ourselves against anti-Semitism, being prejudiced against Jews, but we also need to guard ourselves against Islamophobia. If you were around last week, you know what I think about the word Islamophobia. I think it's a concocted word that's designed to basically shut up any critics of Islam. And I'm going to say straight up that I reject this idea. Now, I want to be very clear here. I think being against the Jews because they're a race, or being against Arabs because they're a race, or whatever you think, is stupid, okay? But I have every right to criticize Judaism, and I have every right to criticize Islam, because that is the heart and soul of the conflict. The real problem I have with politicians and the way liberalism is going about Islam and all that is this. If you want to understand why these two sides are fighting each other, we have Judaism as a religion that claims that God gave that land to Israel. Okay? And then we have over here the Islamic people who also believe that God gave this land to them. Those are both religious beliefs, and that is the reason why fighting is going. And you're never going to establish a lasting peace in this area until you acknowledge that the big thing is the religious problem. And pointing that out is not being anti-Semitic, it's not being Islamophobic, it's called looking at reality, okay? That these two religions are fighting each other because they both believe that God has given the land to them. And so they fight each other, they kill each other, and that's what it's about, okay? That's why I won't take a side in this, because both of them are equally wrong, because they have this religious nonsense, okay? I feel that what Hamas did was despicable, regardless, okay? And Israel has a right, in this particular instance, to defend itself. The problem is religion ends dialogue, okay? And this religious conflict, these religions, the land is ours, we're Jews, the land is ours. It doesn't matter what you say, I don't want to hear about compromise, we're going to fight these people. Same true for the Islamic. We don't want to compromise, this land is ours. God has given us to this, Ali Akbar, and off they go. You cannot, and this is where I disagree with liberalism here in this country very strongly. I don't get you why you are supporting the religion of Islam, okay? It is everything that you're against, okay? Women's rights, they don't have any under Islam, okay? Freedom of the individual doesn't exist. Okay, when you look at homophobic, absolutely, they kill homosexuals. I mean, this is literally the motherlode of everything you as liberals are against, but somehow you give it a free pass. I don't hear Christianophobe, I don't hear Hinduphobe, I don't hear Buddhaphobe, I don't hear any phobias related to any other religions except Islam. It is not a race, it's not a culture, it's a religion, and as such, it is right to criticize it. And I'm getting tired of the president and other people who support him saying, well, we've got to guard against anti-Semitism and Islamophobia. I don't have an irrational fear of Islam. I have very rational fear of certain Islamic people, okay? Because they do shit like Hamas did, okay? I'm still kind of etched in my mind September 11, 2001. You can hide it all you want, but that was a religiously motivated terrorist attack. End of discussion. Okay? I'm sorry, that's what it was. And then nobody wanted to plaster these court cases in front of the media. It was like, What, we're not going to get the testimony of these guys that got arrested, and hear their motivations? Because we know what their motivations are, but you don't want to possess that because that would be Islamic phobic. It's like, come on, man. Get rid of this stuff, okay? You need to stop defending Islam with Islamophobia, okay? You need to stop doing that. Now, if Islamic people are truly the victims, didn't do anything, then absolutely come out there and say they're the victims and didn't do anything. But don't sit there and talk to me about these religions of peace, because I don't think Christianity, Islam, or Judaism are religions of peace. I don't think so. Now, what do I feel about Christians in this? Well, isn't it amazing how giddy every time something happens in Israel, all these people with their prophetic notions, and they want to read the book of Revelation like a newspaper, get so giddy. Oh boy, the end of the world is coming. Jesus is going to return and destroy everything. And we who have been the elect or whatever get to rise with him and be with him. Come on, man. This is where this nation, where my nation, the United States, pushes back something because of religious reasons. Okay, now I'm not saying we shouldn't support Israel. They are one of the few democracies in the area. And, I'm not saying that what Hamas did was right. Okay, very wrong. But we seem to be overly giddy about trying to bring about the end of the world. And you have these two sides that claim the land is there, and then you got, one side taking bets and supporting one side against the other, all waiting for the apocalyptic end of the world because they're trying to bring it about. And to me, it's just kind of sick and twisted. And, once again, wouldn't we all be better off if none of these religions existed? I think we would. Moving on to Job. Job 23 through 37. A guy named Elihu rises and begins to rebuke Job. Now remember, Job has been going back with his friends. Job has asserted his integrity against all attacks. And all of a sudden, Elihu rises, and he begins to criticize Job. He rebukes him. How dare you ask for this from God? Okay, he's like, and the argument basically goes, Elihu rebukes Job, Elihu, or whatever, says that God is just. Well, why is he just? Well, because he has all the power. In other words, God can't do any wrong because he's omnipotent, because he's the powerful one. He's the guy sitting on the throne, so he can do no wrong. In other words, might makes right, authority makes right. There's no morality here that's good or bad. The only morality that matters is what God decides. And when God decides something, it's moral. Okay, so, what are you going to do with that? I want to get to this because a lot of people think the book of Job is a great book when it comes to God. And the problem with the picture of God that's presented in the literature is that basically God gets to do what he wants because he's God, and nobody should question it, not even Job. Job gets exonerated because he didn't really do any wrong. That's correct. But God begins through Elihu, starting with Elihu and later on himself. This kind of makes Elihu a really weird character, almost unnecessary, because he rebukes Job and says he speaks for God and everything. Then in chapter 38, God comes and speaks for himself. Well, why did he need a go-between? It really feels weird, like an added character or something, that we needed to have this go-between moment. But it's like, Elihu, when you look at the book of Job, it's about justifying the fact that God can do anything he wants because he's God. He doesn't have to defend his justice. He doesn't have to defend his actions. I'm God. Don't question me. And we're starting to get that with Elihu. If you read those chapters, you'll get this feeling that Elihu is just like, God is just. Why is he just? Because he has the power. He's the one that makes the decisions. It doesn't matter whether you think it's right or not, Job. He's done this to you. It was right and it was just. End of discussion. Might makes right. And that is the portrayal of God that we get in Job. That we shouldn't question God because whatever he does is right. He answers that dilemma. Is everything, are things moral because God does them, or are they already moral and God just affirms them? Okay. Basically, Job takes the first view, which is because God does it, it's moral. End of story. And we start to get that with Elihu. And I just find him an interesting character and almost unnecessary, because God's going to start speaking for himself in a little bit when we get to chapter 38. And I just don't get it. I just don't. All right, a couple comments. I had a real recent comment today, actually. This is Saturday that I'm recording this, but it'll air on Sunday. But today I got this comment about how being a compassionate anti-theist is an oxymoron. And the nature of the comment kind of tells me that this person did not know what an anti-theist was. An anti-theist is simply somebody who does not want to live in a world with a God. Can I prove that a God doesn't exist? I don't know that. I'm still going through my Wednesday series. But at present, let's just say, no, I can't prove a God doesn't exist, but I don't want to live in a world with one. Okay, that's what it means to be an anti-theist. Now, this person claimed that being an anti-theist makes you an imperialist and makes you genocidal. Except I don't remember any anti-theist raising up his nation to go out and commit genocide. Okay, now some of the proofs that this guy, he talks about Aaron Ra being 13/50. I couldn't find any information on that. Maybe somebody can help me out what that accusation's all about. He talks about Christopher Hitchens supporting the Iraq War, as if support for the Iraq War makes you an imperialist or a genocidal person. There were tons of people on all faiths, all political spectrums that supported the Iraq wars. Okay, it was across ideologies, because it was felt that this needed to be done, that Saddam Hussein needed to be removed as a ruler because he was a bad ruler. Islamic people supported this, Christian people supported this, Jewish people supported this, people around the world supported it. You know, the United States Democrats and Republicans both supported that war. Okay, even though the Democrats try to get themselves off the hook and say it was all Bush's thing, they voted for it. Don't forget that they voted for it. Okay, and so this idea that only anti-theists supported the Iraq War, so therefore anti-theists are somehow genocidal, imperialistic. I have no imperialistic ambitions as an anti-theist. My whole thing is, I think the world would be better without religion. I think that religion causes a lot more problems, and in and of itself, it doesn't do any good. Okay, I know a lot, well, religion does a lot of good. Okay, here's my response to that. Name me something that religion does that is good that could not be done unless the religion was present. Name it. Okay. Well, we can run a soup kitchen. A secularist can run a soup kitchen. We can give money to charity. Secularists can do that. We can build a strong community. Secularists can do that too. You don't need a religion for all the good that you claim that religion can do. Contrary-wise, almost everybody in this room, if I asked you to say, hey man, can you think of anything that religion has done that's an atrocity? And everybody raises their hand. Because they all know something, that in the name of religion, an atrocity was committed. Okay, so, sorry, I'm an anti-theist because I don't think religion actually does any good. Any good that it does, it could be done by other means. Okay, kind of like putting God in the gaps, you know, which is actually more about, it doesn't matter whether, I've had this question too, where gaps are getting smaller or larger. I don't care. It is improper for you to see a gap and then just say, well, God. Okay, you got to prove that God belongs in that gap. Whether it's getting bigger or smaller is irrelevant. Okay. So I had that. He talked about Sam Harris, you know, advocating a nuclear strike, a first strike. And if you read Sam Harris in context on that particular issue, he's talking, there's a lot of conditions. Number one, you have an Islamic State that is run by the clerics. Two, they have an apocalyptic vision of the future that they can bring about the apocalypse, probably through nuclear Armageddon. Three, they get their hands on a nuke. Sam Harris's political advice to any government is nuke them before they nuke you. Okay, that's what he's saying. I'm going to tell you that there's probably not a single Western nation that does not have that as one of their scenarios. Okay. When the military does scenarios, they're saying, okay, what happens if? What do we do? And then they go through all the options. I'm going to tell you right now that one of the options somewhere written in some file in the Pentagon somewhere is if an Islamic State gets a hold of a nuclear weapon and they have absolute intent to use it, a first strike is a recommendation. That has nothing to do with anti-theism. It has everything to do with politics. It has everything to do with religion. You want to talk about anti-theism and genocidal? What the hell are we fighting in Palestine for? Certainly no anti-theist is over there going, hey, guys, let's fight over anti-theism. Dude, that has got to be one of the most asinine comments I have received on this channel. That anti-theism has something to do with imperialism or genocide. Citation, please. Couldn't find anything about Aaron Ra. Christopher Hitchens advocated for the Iraq War. So did every flippin' Christian and Islamic person that supported the Iraq War too. Are they genocidal, imperialistic? And how do you say that anything was imperialistic? The United States literally gave control of Iraq back to the Iraqi people and walked away. Okay, how's that imperialistic? That makes no sense. Imperialism means you take over land and you keep it. Okay, they didn't do that. Okay, I don't get the comment. It has got to be the most asinine comment I've received in a long time. It really is. I mean, I'm not saying you're asinine. I'm saying your comment is asinine because it doesn't show a lot of thought. Okay, it doesn't really show a lot of political savvy or thought. One last comment. I've been in dialogues with several Calvinists. I want to make myself abundantly clear about Calvinism. Even when I was a Christian, I felt that Calvinism, how can I put this, was one of the most evil theologies ever created. It has been used to justify all kinds of things in the name of God's elect. The only thing I can think of that might be more evil is Islamic jihadists, Christian, and Catholics, okay, with, their support of certain nations in order to take things over. But when you look at the history of Calvinism from, Geneva, where Calvin literally gets people killed, okay, because they disagree with him. Calvin's a great guy. Sorry, I'd rather go meet Martin Luther. Even though I have a lot of problems with Martin Luther, at least I could have a beer with Martin Luther. John Calvin, you can't do anything with except talk theology because that's all he's. And talk about a theology made in a man's own image. Whew. I've read the Institutes and studied a little bit about his life and history, and I'm like, man, theology is a reflection of the man. Imagine that. And then you get to the United States with Manifest Destiny. You get to the Pilgrims landing at Plymouth Rock and thinking God has killed all these people so that they, the elect, can inherit the earth. And the westward expansion, Manifest Destiny, as I said before. I can't think of a doctrine or a theology that hasn't done more evil than Calvinism. There are very few exceptions. Okay, that sovereignty at the expense of God's all of it, God's other attributes. It just turned my tail when I was a Christian. Now as an atheist and somebody who looks at it from a political point of view, some theologies have more political force than others. And Calvinism is definitely designed to have political force. Okay, because, God is sovereign and anybody who's elected, anybody who's a king, anybody who's in charge is obviously God's anointed and they can do no wrong. And it's just like the God that they have. If God pre-elects half the world to damnation, well, he's God, so what? I mean, I'm sorry. I've heard so many stories about, you ask a Calvinist, hey, some of your children are pre-elected to damnation. How do you feel about that? Well, if that's God's will, that's God's will. These are your flipping kids. If there's a doctrine on planet Earth, a Christian theology on planet Earth that causes ones to lose humanity over other people and lose compassion over other people, it's got to be Calvinism. Sorry, it just has to be. A little bit of my history, I used to be on a forum of Arminians, and I was Sir Edward of the Order of Anti-Calvinists. That was my title, okay, that I put on my signature every time I posted. And that's how strongly I felt about it back then, and I feel even more strongly now that I'm an atheist, okay? So you can keep your sovereign God. Okay, I am so glad that he doesn't exist because he's a complete jerk. He is completely amoral. Okay, there's no morality to him. I have a better sense of morality than the Calvinist God. I do. I don't know. pretty much have a better sense of morality than most of the Abrahamic gods. In fact, all of them. Yeah, all of them. Okay. And I'm sorry, most human beings do. So, when you can create a doctrine or a theology that allows you to look at another person and say, oh, well, they're going to burn in hell, and that's God's will, so what? That's pretty evil. It's amazing how that theology can strip you of your humanity. I don't really have a lot of go with that. So just want to make myself sure about it. I mean, you're welcome to debate Calvinism with me, but you need to understand you're not going to push me off that rock. Okay, because I made my stand on that a long time before I became an atheist. So just keep that in mind. Well, thank you for stopping by. It looks like we're at the 30-minute mark. I'm going to try to keep it about 30 minutes for Sundays with the Rabyd Atheist. Just make sure you like, share, and do the things you do. Make sure you live your best life. Okay, you only get one go around, and then it's over. There is no afterlife, so don't waste your time, your money, your opportunities on religion, because religion is a falsehood. It is a definite falsehood. Embrace something that allows you to think for yourself and think more clearly and solve real problems with real solutions. And I thank you once again for stopping by. Like, share, subscribe, do the things that you do, and I appreciate every single one of you, and I'll catch you next time.